Today I'm going to show you how we make meatball stew in Louisiana. This is a recipe I made with my stepfather while I was visiting home, and I'll take you along as we make it. We happened to have all the ingredients that we needed for this recipe, so technically this is a pantry challenge recipe, what's in my mom's pantry. We start with our roux. This is oil and flour cooked down to form the basis of the stew. This is also what we use when we make gumbo. This is pre-prepared. You can also make it from scratch, but it's convenient to have a jar on hand. The next ingredient would be rice. We always have rice in our pantry, so this was something we already had as well. We used ground beef for the meatballs. You can use whatever variety of ground beef you want. We seasoned it very simply with Tony Chachere's Creole seasoning. This is kind of our go-to seasoning, but you could use any Creole seasoning or Cajun seasoning that you like. This recipe includes 1 chopped bell pepper. We had ours already pre-chopped and frozen. We like to keep these in the freezer. We also used 1 medium onion. You could use any onion variety. We used the baby Dutch yellow potatoes. You could use any variety of small potatoes. These are the carrots we had, so this is what we used, with just a plain variety of orange carrots. For a side dish, we used frozen corn that we had previously shucked and boiled and frozen. To start off, just make your meatballs however you like to prepare them. You could also use pre-prepared meatballs if you're not someone who makes them yourself. Now that the meatballs are done, we're going to transfer them to a plate. We diced the onion very fine to make sure that it blended well in the dish. Our bell pepper was already chopped, but we combined it with the onion to add to the pan. We added our onion and bell pepper to the pan, making sure that we left the fat that was left over from the meatballs. That's important because that forms the good flavor that you're going to get from this dish. We're going to saute these onions and bell peppers on a medium heat to allow the flavors to meld with the fat left over from the meatballs. While the onions and bell peppers are cooking, we're going to go ahead and prepare the roux. We just have to soften it a little bit because as it sits, it sort of solidifies and you've got to mix it up. As you can see, they're starting to brown, which is good. That's going to add really good flavor to the stew. Because we have well water, we use packaged water in our recipes. We're just going to add a little bit right now just to kind of scrape off the gleanings at the bottom and get that flavor going. We added at this point about 16 to 20 ounces of water, just enough to cover the onions and bell pepper and get a gravy started. At this point, we add the roux. We've stirred it and combined it in the jar so that the oil and flour are mixed well, and we're just gonna add it to the gravy, and it's gonna add wonderful flavor and be the basis of this stew. We ended up adding about 3.5 to 4 tablespoons of this roux just to get it to the color and flavor that we like. Now that we've added the roux, we're going to turn the heat up to high so that we can allow it to cook down really well. You want to bring the roux up to a boil so that it can cook down completely. At this point, we added another 16-ounce bottle of water so that the roux could continue cooking and cook down all the way. brought it back up to a boil and just kind of stirred it frequently to make sure everything has a chance to cook down and blend together. While the roux was cooking, we chopped our carrots. We could have used a few more, but this is what we had, and you can always add more later. We also chopped our potatoes. We cut them in about thirds, big enough to be chunky, but small enough that they can cook easily. This is what the gravy looks like after that roux has cooked down. We're ready to add our meatballs, potatoes, and carrots at this point. Prior to adding the meatballs, potatoes, and carrots, we've lowered the heat and allowed it to cool off just a little bit. We're gonna add the meatballs, potatoes, and carrots, and they're just gonna sort of stew in there and form our meatball stew. We cover it with a lid at this point and just allow it to come up to a little bit higher heat just to make sure everything cooks together and the flavors blend well. At this point, we add some more Tony Chachere's. We've already added some earlier on, but we're gonna add some more for a finishing touch. Our side dish is very simple. It's just corn on the cob that we previously shucked and boiled. It's ready to go. We simply microwave it and add butter. Our rice has been cooking while we've been finishing up the stew. We cook our rice in a rice cooker, but you could cook it on the stove as well. Ten out of 10 would recommend. This is one of my favorite recipes out of Louisiana. I always request it and it never disappoints.